All right. Thank you everyone for coming to the Applying to Grad School webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and start by having our panelists introduce themselves. So whoever wants to go first is welcome.
I can start. Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Vargas Hernandez. I am a PhD candidate in North Dakota State University. I am in the Environmental and Science Conservation program, but my main research focus is in fungal endophytes and coffee plants. I am an international student, and I'm really happy to share with you all today. So happy to talk a little bit and I don't know, see all different perspectives that we might have around grad school.
Okay, I can go. I'm Bella. I'm a third-year PhD student, and I'm at Oregon State University. I work with Dr. Fletcher Holliday, and I'm working on how host range expansions and climate influence fungal endophyte communities and their interactions with disease and like host stress. Um, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Mare. I'm at Chico State. I'm a master's student, and I'm looking at the effects of fire intensity on soil microbial communities in blue oak woodlands.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Tani. I recently just graduated with my master's just this past August, so I'm applying to PhD programs this cycle as well. Um, I went to Chico State and I was within the Cobian lab with Mare and Julia, and my thesis was focused on the priority effects of foliar fungal endophytes in the Florida communities, and I'm also a first generation immigrant, and yeah. Thank you.
Um, I'll just briefly introduce myself too, since I'm running the panel. My name's Lauren. I am a third-year PhD student at Clark University in Massachusetts. My research focus is looking at antifungal resistance and the opportunistic pathogen Basidiopoulos. Um, and I think we'll go ahead and get started with some questions that I have here that I think might be good for people to hear. So first question, and anyone is welcome to answer this. When do you think is the right time to start reaching out to advisors? And do you have any recommendations of how to go about that?
I think the earlier the better. Just kind of having that like you on their radar. I think emailing them is good, and I think a lot of times like professors are super busy and they're not going to see your first email. So if you do email them again, sometimes it's best to just send them another cold email rather than replying to your old email. It might have gone to spam. Um, yeah, those are just some recommendations I have there. I remember reaching out to a professor and then replying to the original email, and they said it disappeared. So just sending another full email would be good.
I agree with Bella. Email is always a really good tool to reach out to potential advisors. Um, I will say when I'm really curious about when is the right time. I think that that's really subjective of when you're ready to start grad school too. So that is something important too. Sometimes, like maybe mm, you know that maybe grad school is not in your immediate plan, but you are thinking in the possibility, I don't know, in a couple of years. So reaching out to those professors beforehand, that could open the opportunity for them to keep you in mind if there is a opportunity when you are ready to join. So I agree that the earliest the best, but I feel that if you right now are not ready to start grad school, but you know that is a plan that you have in the future, you can start reaching out and just let them know that you are interested in their lab. So whenever time aligns, things align, maybe you can kind of have already like that conversation.
I feel like I did things the wrong way. I didn't know that I wanted to go to grad school, and the application was due in like, I think they're due like in May or something like that sometimes. Um, and some programs, at least here at Chico State, I don't know other schools, but for my school, sometimes they still accept people in the spring and then in the fall as well. So I had taken a year gap after I graduated from my bachelor's and then decided that I wanted to do grad school last minute, which is like, don't, you mean, if it works out that way, it works out that way, but I wouldn't suggest doing it that way. But so then it helped that like I was just applying to the master's program that I did my undergrad in, so I kind of already knew the professors. So then I emailed the professors then and there in like that very May, and we got everything going, and I got my application in pretty quickly. Um, so I would say don't wait until the last minute like I did, but if it happens, the worst they can say is no. Sometimes you don't really think that you're ready for grad school, but you secretly are. So I don't know. I would just ask maybe the program coordinator. Again, the worst they can say is like no.
Great. Another question to lead into after that is how did you choose to do either a master's or PhD program? For instance, if any of you doing a PhD chose not to do a master's or chose to do a master's, could you share how you made that decision? And then looking back, do you think you would have made the same one?
Yeah, I can start again. So I'm doing a PhD. I didn't do a master's. For me, it was a trade-off of I either wanted to do a master's or take a couple of years as a gap year, or I took like 2 gap years. And for me, I come from a low-income background, so money was the real motivator there. I would rather make more money taking a few years off and like working in science than being a master's student and then just jumping right into a PhD with that experience. Um, so that's what really influenced my decision was being able to make some money before being a grad student.
I don't know. I think that for me that was a really tricky decision. I also took a couple of gap years. I took more than Bella. But same idea, just to work in industry, and that really helps me to assess if I want to go to grad school or not. And I think that in my case, that worked out well. Uh, at the beginning, because I am an international student, the idea to move to a completely new place that I didn't know and really different, that kind of drive my decision to do masters first, but then I changed in the way. So I switched to the PhD. So that being said, it's always a possibility to change your mind in the process. I think that sometimes we think that we need to take a decision right away, and I think that that's fine. And if you can do that right away and you know what you want, go for it. Like if you already have those you already made your mind that you want to do like a PhD, I think that go for it. In my case, I wasn't sure if I want to do a PhD. And then a little bit about like moving to a different place and see how things work out. Like that drive my decision to do a master, and eventually I just switched to the PhD. So that's always a possibility.
Yeah, for me, I went straight to a master. So I was actually pre-med. I was looking into medical programs, and then I got into research with Dr. Kobe and kind of fell in love with research. And I was at the time I was like, oh, what if I should apply for PhD programs? And he was like, I don't think you're ready for that yet. Just like because it was COVID during my undergrad, so I didn't, most of my classes were online. My science courses were online. So I think it's just like really different of just like doing research online versus in person. So I would say like my scientific research skills wasn't the most like I don't think it was as strong as it should be at the year that I was in, just because of it was COVID. And I wasn't really like thinking like a scientist as much as I would be in person. So I think the master's program definitely prepared me more of like making sure like is PhD something really right for me? Um, that's kind of where I'm at right now, because a year ago I was kind of like PhD iffy, I don't know. And then now that I've like kind of defended and like kind of reflected of like what I went through my master's and how it would be different or similar to the PhD program, it kind of just like solidified it more for me to commit to a PhD program. I know it's different for everyone, but just for my background, just like with my research background at the time, like I just wasn't as strong as an applicant if I were to go straight to a PhD program. So that's why I think the master's program was the right fit for me.
For me, I wasn't really thinking long term. I wasn't really thinking about a PhD or a master's. After my bachelor's, I went into the Forest Service and I really liked what I was doing because I was an EEO major, so an ecology major for my bachelor's. And then I really liked all of the ecology stuff. Um, but I also took a class with Dr. Kobian and just kind of like it kept me up at night because I was like, wow, it was a really cool class for like a year. And then when I went into the Forest Service and I started exploring my actual career opportunities, and I started realizing that you can make more money with the higher the degree that you get, the more money you make. Um, and I never really thought that I would really like research. I mean, I like research in the field versus like, the lab is really different. Um, and so then after a year of exploring my career, I was like, wow, I kind of would actually really like to get a higher degree. And so after talking with Dr. Kobian and, other advisors, like they gave me the option of, they were like, well, you can do a project that has field work and, lab work. And then I was like, well, that's great. So then I ended up choosing to do a master's. But yeah.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like a lot of us here have taken gap years. How do you think that impacted your academic journey? And then once again, going back, do you think that that was a good decision, especially given right now the state of funding for science in the US and the number of PhD and master's programs accepting applicants, more people might be considering that option.
I would say for me, it really helped because money was definitely something that I was thinking about when I was going into my master's. And the Forest Service doesn't pay too well, but it pays well enough to where, like I could save up money. So once I figured out that I did want to go to grad school, like I had enough money saved up to help me with my like just grad school applications and just like the whole entire like tuition and stuff. Um, the only thing I would say that was difficult for me was as much as I missed school and being in a classroom, once I went from the field to being in a classroom, that was a little difficult for me because I mean, I was out and about, getting smacked by spider webs all the time. And then I was just like inside four walls for like the whole day. So definitely that was an adjustment, but I think I would definitely take a gap year again and then, do the whole school again. I really like that.
Yeah, I also really like taking some time away. And I think it gave me a better work-life balance than just like being in school and doing classwork all the time and on the weekends. And that's something that's been really challenging going back to grad school and having to work way more than I did during my gap years. But I think the experience I got being outside of academia was good to get away from the academia push to work all the time. Yeah, I think I would do it again as well.
I completely agree. I think that sometimes we are not sure about taking a gap between like degrees, but I think that it really helps to give you perspective. And some people will think that maybe you are getting delay in getting the degree that you want, but I will say that you are getting other skills that if you keep going in academia, you will not you will not get exposed as early on. So I feel that um, definitely is something that I question myself a lot when I was taking the decision to take the that time off. But definitely is a good way to get some funding for the grad school during grad school to like just to pay like um some of the tuition, like the fees and like the tuition that we need to pay and other stuff, but also like to gain some experience that we will not get like if we stay only in academia. So in my case, that will work. I don't know. I don't know if we have cases that somebody that just keep going in academia that maybe want to share a little bit that perspective. I don't know. I think that will be interesting.
I took a gap year between my undergrad and master's, but I would say take longer if you need to. Like listen to your body if you need to in your mind, because I was last year I was trying to apply like right after my like I was hoping to be in a PhD program right now. But with the whole application, with the lab work while being on school, I was just crashing out every single day. I'm like, this should be an exciting moment for me because I get to connect with all these professors and like I get to fangirl about them. I read their papers and like possibly working with them. Yeah, I think just like taking the applying during your gap year, I feel like would be ideal because one, like you're not stressed out with school. You get to just like apply for schools that you're very interested in and get to contact all the professors that you like and just to connect with them rather than like being so stressed about all the deadlines and making sure you have a connection with each school so you can apply to a specific deadline. Um, but yeah, I think that's just from my experience. I say take a gap year as much as you need to. I don't think there's a specific standard of you should be taking a gap year for, but if anything, you've already achieved so much with your bachelor's. Take a gap year.
Great, thank you guys. So going along with that, with taking a gap year can be a great experience, can help you build some additional skills or just take time off from academia. Do you think that any of the job experience, either in or out of science that you had during your gap year, helped improve your prospects for graduate school? And along with that, did any of you take the GRE for grad school, and how much did your grades versus your research and like actual skill experience impact your application process?
I'd say for my job during my gap year didn't really help with I don't think it helped with my graduate experience at all because I worked as a gastrointestinal technician. So I was helping colonoscopies, like procedures. So it's completely different from fungal endophytes for sure. But I definitely learned a lot of just like working in the healthcare and make like it's definitely solidified that like medical field is not for me for sure. I think that helped me a lot with career wise of what I wanted to do, but not necessarily with my graduate experience. And as for the GRE, I never took it. What I've noticed, like most of the schools don't even take it anymore. So yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, I think having a gap year to show you like what you don't want to do is a really good experience. And then for my gap year, I worked as a lab manager for a couple of years, like in the field that I want to be in. And so the experience that I got was like crucial to getting this job. And it also kind of like helped me network to getting into grad school because my advisor did his PhD in the lab that I was working in. So like a lot of the same skills applied to what I'm doing now. So I think both have their benefits for sure. I'll also say I did not take the GRE, and I don't think any schools required it or took it when I applied either.
Yeah, I think that's the trend that I've seen as well is most schools it's either optional or it's not accepted as all at all. So I think it's no longer a focus for applications.
I think it was one of the nice things that came out of COVID is not having
Yes.
that.
All right, does anyone else have anything to share about, or also like, were you worried about like your grades in undergrad and worried about how much that impacted your application compared to the experience and research that you may have had as an undergrad to get you into a grad school position?
Yeah, that was actually a big concern for me. So my undergrad, I did 6 years of undergrad. Two of them were engineering. Um, and I thought, I think too, like, so I'm from LA, like coming from a low income community, and then just like just going coming from a school that like luckily I came from a cool high school and a pretty that had a lot of good resources. But I feel like there was definitely a lack of exposure to different careers. So like in middle school, when I took Mesa and I just like, wow, I really like engineering. And then I don't know where that thought process came from that I wanted to be an engineer. When I was going around like picking everybody's fingers and looking at stuff under the microscope and stuff all the while. But so then those first 2 years were really rough for me coming from like a very tight-knit family and then being like 9 hours away, and just like discovering a lot of stuff of how my brain works and whatnot. So my GPA from the first 2 years were really bad. And so that kind of, as we all know, GPAs just kind of like follow you everywhere. Even if you get really good grades the last couple semesters, like once you tank, you tank. And so that was one of my concerns was that I wasn't going to have a good enough GPA to get into a master's program. Even though the 4 years of bio were really good, like my GPA was still not the best, right? So that was one of my concerns. And I think now some of the applications have that thing where you put in your major GPA versus your actual GPA. And so that kind of helped me out. But what also helped me out was like, yeah, the same thing of that gap year really also gave me a lot of experience in working in the field and giving me, I feel like strengthening my ecological background. And so when I came into the master's project or to the master's project program, I was looking at fungi on frogs. Because at the time when I was doing my field work, that was like what I was most focused on was frogs. Um, so I would say that kind of strengthened me getting into the program was because like, I had already solidified kind of like of a passion versus like my GPA. Plus, a lot of people recommend that in your personal statement, you explain why you had such a low GPA. So yeah. So I would say that to not let your GPA kind of discourage you from, applying.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
well, I think in our department, yeah, I'll just echo that. Your research experience definitely matters more than your GPA. Like if a professor wants you, they'll overlook like even a 2 point something. Like, yeah, I would also encourage you to apply despite that.
Great. So I want to go back and revisit talking more about advisors because that can be a very difficult and very big topic within grad school, especially in the sciences where we're not just applying to a professional program, but actually applying to work with a specific advisor. So what are some major considerations that you would recommend someone look at when trying to pick an advisor? And if you could share how you found the advisor that you are currently working with, or for those that just graduated, how did you find the advisor that you were previously working with?
Um, I can start in this one. So it has a lot of content, this question. I don't know. Let me try to break it out. My experience, I found my PI through social media. So basically, a friend that was already a grad student shared this for grad school opportunity that my current PI was looking for a student. So basically, I applied to that opportunity. I didn't got it at the first time. She saw my CV and she saw like my experience, no grades, a little bit echo like what people already mentioned here. Like she looked in my previous like undergrad experience, and she mentioned that she didn't like somebody else was hired for the position at the time because it was more so it was a work more related with birds and fungi, and I didn't have any experience in birds. However, like that first approach opened the opportunity for later on when she was working in a grant for fungi in plants. Uh, we got in contact again, and that is how like the I don't know, like the opportunity got like I don't know, was built up kind of the thing. Um, I think the important thing to look in a PI is take a look in their students. Usually their students and the members of their lab will tell you about how how approachable is a PI, what kind of things they value. Um, Nowadays, like try to see what are the experience that the lab members have and talk with their students. That is the best way that you can like kind of have a better idea of how is the experience to work with them. Uh, yeah, I think that that will be my recommendation. Just try to talk with people that is already in the lab or that graduate from that lab so you can have a better understanding of how is the dynamics working with that PI. Because at the end, we are all persons and we are social beings. So it's important to keep that in mind when we are working, that we feel comfortable in the environment that we will be working on.
Anyone else have anything to share about how you found or picked the advisor that you worked with?
For me, I reached out to Dr. Cobain as an undergrad. So I've been working with him as an undergrad, and kind of from there, he eventually became my master's advisor. So I think just like early on that just having that connection with him early on and just like getting into research allowed me to kind of not have to worry about reaching out to other professors. But as for right now, I'm like reaching out to PhD professors, and when I do meet with them, I usually would make a list of questions that I want to ask them, and usually most of them is just like, what's your lab environment? Like, how do you mentor your students? Do you do weekly meetings with them? And like, how do you approach when an experiment does like fails or something like that? Um, you can make it more personable to you, like especially when you know what you need from an advisor and like how to learn from an advisor. I would say don't be scared to ask questions, especially when they made the time to meet with you and they're usually busy. So I'd say take that time to an advantage to just ask them whatever, because they're pretty open and they're just like excited to learn about you too as a student.
Yeah, I would say kind of off of Tawny, like it's gonna take a little bit of reflection too if you've never really had an advisor or a mentor, is to kind of think about like, okay, what is my learning style? Like, what is my mentee style? Like, what does my communication style look like? You know, what is like, how do I like go through a long day of lab? So just kind of like reflecting on that and also getting to know yourself in the sense of like, okay, you know, if this is what I like, then matching it up with an advisor, and then also framing your questions to ask them that way.
Great. So connecting to that, so once you have identified an advisor, probably after the first time you've talked to them, but it sounds like it might be a good fit for you. How do you go about asking about the funding situation in the lab? Um, so we understand like sometimes there's TA options, sometimes there's RA options, sometimes you need to find outside funding. So if you could share what your experience is and any recommendations about going around the conversation of money.
I think now, given the current funding climate, it's super important to be proactive on applying for your own funding. Like sometimes even like when you go into these meetings with professors, having some things in mind of what you want to apply for with them will give you an advantage. I know in our department, grad students are currently only being accepted if they have their own funding sources. So like given like it's more of a right now thing. It wasn't so much a thing when I was applying, but that's something to keep in mind for now. But I think being like straightforward with that and not afraid to ask is really important.
I think nowadays that's like the very first concern is for everybody, whether it's for the mentor or the mentee, talking about funding. So I would say like, yeah, don't get discouraged. Like I think that's the new norm is talking about funding, whether if it's available or not.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too when I reach out to professors. They're like, "Oh, want to meet with you, but we got no money, so it's up to you if you actually want to meet, if you're willing to take a challenge." I'm like, "Okay." I mean, most of them are just like really honest upfront with like their funding. So I think right now it's just like openly talked about early on. Yeah.
And I think that just be honest that that's a concern and talk about directly. Like I think that we all know that funding is an important part of grad school. So uh, ask the questions that you need to ask. Don't feel afraid because that's a completely normal and okay question to ask when you are applying or looking for options.
Great. And going along with that, for anyone watching this who might be an undergrad, it's kind of intimidating to think about how to apply for funding if they haven't done it before. Any of you have any recommendations of where people can start looking for funding options?
Yeah, the GRFP is awesome to apply for, especially before being a grad student, because you can apply for it as many times as you want before you enter grad school. And then when you become a grad student, you can apply for it once. So that's a good one to apply for. And then I'll have to look it up, but there's a new I don't know if it's like the Smith Fellowship, but there's a new like fellowship for um people entering PhD programs in the United States. Given the new funding climate, there are just new funding sources opening up. So I can look that up really quickly and put that in the chat.
I would say sometimes the schools also have their own funding pot. Like for ours, the biological sciences has some, and then the graduate studies office also sometimes has some.
And along with that, like you're really interested in a lab, and I think that if the professor is also interested in you, you can have this conversation like, where should I start looking for funding? Like, where do you recommend, like, which kind of organization should I start looking for possible like fundings opportunities? Because they will know better that anybody where to get funding or where if there are opportunities, funding opportunities open out there. So that's a good place also to like having this conversation and asking if they have any idea where to start so we can work together in that process or looking for funding opportunities.
Great. Thanks, guys. Was there anything that surprised you about the transition for undergrad to grad school? Anything that was really unexpected that you think would be good for people to know about?
For me, that there's less classes, but the workload almost feels either the same or like more. Um, there are less classes that I feel you have to take, but there's definitely more reading and more writing that you have to do. And obviously, if you're spending time in lab, then you're spending time in lab, or with your advisor. But I think it's also a little bit easier that master's is based on kind of like what you want to do, so it kind of makes it a little bit less um, like scary, because you're kind of just following your passion. But yeah, that's what I would say.
I would say just being able to have your 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 minute, or 20 minute talk on the go. Like just like be ready. Like you don't know when you're gonna be talking about your project. I think that's like one of the things I wasn't really prepared about on like how often you have to present, even just like on the papers that you read in classes. Yeah. Um, I wasn't really big on presenting before at all. I hated presentation. I would freak out. And just like with, I guess, with how much we had to present, definitely alleviated a lot of that. And I think that's just like one of the things that you have to prepare for, of just like being able to present on the go and you don't know where that is most of the time.
All right, I have two more questions and then we'll open it up in case there's any attendee questions as well. So first off, I'm sure a lot of students are worried about planning a project for graduate school. How much of a project should you have in mind before going to grad school? Or does it vary based on the advisor you get, how much of a project they give you versus how much you develop yourself?
Advisors will look for both type of students, I think. A lot of them will get grants and they need projects to be done. So I think in a lot of cases, you don't really need to come with your own project in mind and just do their project that they provide to you that's funded by a grant. And then maybe like side questions will come up. So I think in a lot of cases, especially now, unless you have your own funding, like professors will have projects for you. Um, so you kind of have to consider what you want, whether you're really looking to come up with your own ideas and do your own projects. If that's something you want, I think getting your own funding will be key for that. Um, but if you're just looking to do research that you think is cool, then yeah, reaching out to professors that do that, they'll probably have something in mind already. They come up with the ideas all the time. So
I agree. And even though, again, I think that that's another honest conversation that you need to have with your advisor, even when you are applying to their lab, because if you already have an idea and you really, really want to execute that idea, you need to align your expectations with what is available in the lab and their expectations. So that is another important conversation to have because sometimes they will be tied to grants that they already have right down, and basically they need to do that project, like there is not that much room or flexibility to adjust to other kind of ideas. But if you are okay with that, go for it. Like there are opportunities like that. Some of them will be able to find options to incorporate like new ideas that maybe you have and you want to include. So definitely that's not a limitation. If you don't have an idea where to start, they will help you. Again, that's part of like the conversations that you need to have early on when you're applying to grad school.
All right. And the last question I have um, is, did you end up moving to a different country or did you move to a significantly different region of the US for graduate school? What were your considerations to make that choice? And if you could share a little bit about the experience moving or any advice you'd have for someone in a similar situation.
I moved. I moved to a different country. I think that there are a lot of aspects that you need to consider, and it will depend each person. I don't know, culture aspects, language, family. Um, Keep all of them in mind, and just consider that will play a role also when you're doing grad school. So it's not that you can remove those aspects of outside the lab when you're doing grad school. So that is something to keep in mind. But definitely, like that is why I think that having those conversations and understanding a little bit the dynamics in the lab will help, because definitely they will become a great support for you to adjust to all those changes, and basically to help you with multiple things, like finding a place to stay. Like sometimes you would need to look for apartments even when you are not even in the country, or like to realize those kind of logistic aspects. So definitely a lot of get a lot of support of the people that will be your peers in the lab. That will help you a lot to deal with the stress and figure out those aspects that at the beginning you basically need to trust in other people to help you to figure out those aspects.
Yeah, I also moved not quite so far. I'm from Michigan and I live in Oregon now. I agree with Diana. I think a lot of the outside, the lab life matters. Like you want to be somewhere you're going to be happy. And so taking into account like the political climate, the culture of the place, like what kind of nightlife or like things to do, whether your hobbies align with where you're moving. And it really depends on the person too. Like if you want to stay close to your family, like grad school is hard and you should take that into consideration. You should be happy while you're in grad school. If you want to be close to your family, like that's okay to make that decision and not move far away. I think especially in academia, it's kind of like expected of us to be able to move anywhere that we need to go for work, but that's not always the case, and I don't think you should sacrifice that. That's just my opinion, and everyone's different.
For me, the other master's program that I was considering was the one at San Francisco State. But then the longer that I thought about it, I was like, I don't even like cities. Like, I don't even like cities. So it was mostly just kind of like, um, just that. Like, am I going to be happy here for another 2 years? Like, if I move to a city, like, is the traffic going to make me crash out every morning? Or like, just considering that, like, I know all of my friends are in Chico because I've been here for so long. So, like, I was thinking about like what type of community I was going to have in San Francisco State. Like, what was that going to look like? What was it going to look like to have a job? So that was something that kind of pros and cons between staying here in Chico or going to San Francisco State.
Great. So right now we have a little bit over 10 minutes left in our time. So we'll go ahead and open it up if there's any questions that any attendees have.
I do have a question. So, something I feel like that isn't talked about a lot, when applying for grad school is like taking into consideration of like your own family, like, like spouse or partner and stuff like that. So, like, how do people, I guess, go about that? Like, either living separately or bringing their partner with them, or just kind of in that realm of things, kind of like how does that affect applying to schools?
For me, I had like a two-body problem where I wanted to move with my partner and we're both academics. And so it really limited like where I could apply. And so I only applied to grad schools where like they could also like work. And so right now I'm at Oregon State University doing my like grad school, and they're at University of Oregon as a postdoc, and it's like an hour away, but like we kind of make it work. And then we also did like a year of long distance across the country. I think for me, like doing long distance is okay as long as there like is an end in sight. Like there's an end date of like, oh, we'll move and we'll be together in a year or 2 years. And so that's kind of how we did it, but I know it's super challenging, and yeah, I'm happy to answer more if I'm not like answering that well, let me know.
No, I think that does answer it a little bit. Thank you.
And I think that that's something important to keep in mind, because again, like as Bella mentioned, grad school is difficult. So just having that understanding and those conversations beforehand, like just to try to align, because there are two lives, and you don't want to, like you need to get those agreements together before figure out where to move.
grad school also like it kind of changes the nature of your life. In a lot of ways, I always say it's all consuming and it'll definitely impact your relationships. So like having those conversations is also really important. I think Deanna's right.
Thank you for the question. Really good one.
Great. Is there any other attendee questions?
I do
I
have
have
another.
one. Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Cleo.
Okay, thanks, Julia. I forgot how to raise my hand. I know how, it's right here. Okay, whatever. So my question was just like, as I'm looking through what to apply to, like I kind of ended up in this position where I feel like I have a mix of ecology-based programs and like that are like direct admin, and then there's a bunch of other programs that are rotation based, and I'm really excited about the prospect of doing rotations because like that means that I would be able to, you know, like try out different labs and all of that. I don't know, like I'm not sure if that's as common in master's programs, but I was just curious for those of you who maybe did any of you guys find yourself kind of in that position where you weren't sure, um, like I think I kind of started off more like towards rotation programs. And so now I'm like, for the ones that are direct admin, I'm just a little bit like confused about if, you know, like which balance I should be doing of like half rotation or if I should just kind of be doing one or the other. It just feels like a weird position to be in because they're so drastically different. I don't know if that question made sense.
They are really different, and I haven't done a rotation, but I can definitely see the benefits of it. You'll get experience in different labs, you'll learn different skills from different people, and you can really learn what it's like to work with someone before committing. And so I think there's a huge benefit, but I can't really advise on which one's better to apply for. I think they're just different, and it really depends what you want out of it. And I think, yeah, that's all I feel like I can say.
I think that you will get something out of either of them. No matter what is the model of the system that is used, you will learn or get something out of grad school. More than one thing. And it's just not like your research experience, it's also like personal development. Like you will get a lot of experience. In that case, I don't have as much experience in the rotated ones. Um, I have here from other departments here in the university that they have like a little like a year of rotation, and then after that, like the student can decide in which lab they want to kind of like spend the last year of their master to focus in a specific research. So that I think that that's a nice balance. I wish I have done that before, but that was no, I wasn't aware of those possibilities. So the fact that you have awareness of that that's an option, I think that that's really a privilege, and I think that it will depend on what are your expectations of what you would like to get out of it. So I think both are good in their own way.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes sense. Julia, did you have the the follow-up question? Or oh, it looks like someone else also has their hand
It
up.
wasn't a follow-up question, but I'll let Alex go first.
Okay, so hi, I am also a grad student. I'm on the MSA SPS board. So I've just been listening, but I want to chime in because I did do a rotation program. I'm in a PhD and I am at Cornell. And we had the option, our entire cohort was split between rotations and direct admits. They're actually not doing rotations anymore at Cornell just because of funding. Like the rotation itself was funded by the university and they just can't do that anymore. But a big factor that I think a lot of people who did the rotations, including myself, have like talked about afterwards is the fact that we did that for a year. And in some cases, it was really great because I actually got to know different labs in my department and I'm able to use the resources from those labs and the people that I met as a resource. But one very strong contributing factor is the fact that you're a year kind of behind everybody else. And like in the beginning, that doesn't really feel like a lot, but when you're doing either a master's or a PhD, but specifically a PhD for me, like that could theoretically add an entire year to my PhD. And that's a pretty substantial factor.
Yeah, that makes sense. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting that that's like also a factor. That it's
Yeah,
like there are
like
trade-offs. Yeah.
the people who are direct admit are gonna probably finish at least a year before me. Um, so it's not something that gets considered that often, but it is something that's important to consider. And I can talk to you more about it if you'd like another time. But I don't want to disrupt the questions, so go ahead.
Okay, so my final question was, so like when talking to advisors, I remember like I know Tani had mentioned some things of like what are some questions to ask them. I know she was like stuff about like what's the lab environment like, what they do about failed experiments, but like I also wanted to kind of know like what other things, should I be asking when looking into getting into a program?
For me, to add with the questions, with the lab, I would also ask on like what type of experiments that they're planning to do. So like kind of the research directions as well on how you could kind of bounce out of that with your experience with them. Um, I would also ask like what type of like experimental methods they use. So like you kind of get an idea of like what are think like that could also be well your goals too of like what you want to learn in a PhD program of like what they're doing versus the ones that you already have experience in. But yeah.
I think another one could be, hopefully this isn't like too combative, but like what's a weakness you see or like something lacking in your lab? And where do you think I could find support within the department to fill that kind of lack? Like I'm doing a lot of molecular work, but my lab doesn't do that at all. And so I have to look for that elsewhere. And think asking that question and being upfront about it is good. I think also asking the other grad students whether they're happy and how they feel about everything, either within the lab or within the department. I think that, yeah.
I agree. I think that that's key. Understanding again the environment of the lab, like what is the interaction with the students and the PI, and also I think that it's fair to tell what are you looking for in your grad school. Like, are you looking for develop some skills in the field, or you are looking for get more molecular work experience? Like, being really direct to see if you can align what you are looking for with what they can offer. And again, like if they don't align how you can close the gap. Like there are resources somewhere else, like in the department, that can help you to fulfill the gap. In my case, I think that it's important to mention what are your priorities. For example, for me, an important priority is to be able to even that I'm doing grad school, like if I need to go and visit my family, that's something that personally is important for me, that I have the flexibility to do and the understanding of my PI. So I think that that's also important to mention, like there are some personal topics that you know they are key and they are part of your values and principles. I think that is important to 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 have that in the conversation, to make sure that you are not sacrificing like what is core for you, and that they are that aligned with what are the professor's expectations.
Okay, I don't know if the chat will get posted, but I want to mention that the fellowships I mentioned earlier are the Simons Foundation fellowships for people entering grad school in the United States.
Yeah, I'll make sure that the link for that gets added to the YouTube when we get this uploaded. All right, so we're at 1 hour, so I just want to thank all of the panelists again, and thanks to our attendees for asking some really great questions that I didn't even consider adding. So it's always great to get some good feedback. So yeah, this will be posted on the YouTube channel soon for any future reference. Otherwise, I'm sure some of our panels would be happy to provide their email to anyone here if they want some more information. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording.